Hi everybody, free trade is trade between countries without obstacles or barriers. In my last video, we looked at the free trade diagram, this one in particular. We understood how the diagram worked, but also we dissected it into all these areas and looked at the major impacts on the diagram. We are now going to look at the pros and cons of trade, but using this diagram as much as we possibly can to add power to the argument. So if you haven't already, make sure you've watched that video first, then come back to this one so you properly understand what we're talking about here. Let's dive into the pros of free trade. Well, one significant benefit is that countries can exploit their comparative advantage. They can specialize where they have a lower opportunity cost, maximize the output of that good or service, produce it at a low price, but also we get allocative efficiency as countries exploit their comparative advantage. Yes, resources are then diverted to countries who are the most efficient producers to maximize output and satisfy as much consumer demand as possible. That's a great thing, and we can see that on this diagram. It's clear, right? That world suppliers have the comparative advantage. It's why their price is lower than the domestic prices. And we can see that they are producing the vast majority of the output, Q2 to Q3 units, as opposed to domestic firms who are only producing Q2. That is an efficient allocation of scarce resources right there. So we see that benefit on the diagram. Free trade will result in lower prices and higher quantities. These are benefits that we as consumers benefit from every single day of our lives, right? And we love these benefits. The reason for this is multiple. It's the fact that there is comparative advantage exploitation, yes, but also that firms can exploit greater economies of scale as they can sell all around the world, reducing their average cost, reducing prices. The fact that there is now global competition helps to drive prices down and quantities up, but also there is a faster spread of technology with free trade, which we're going to talk about later. And we see a lot of these benefits on the diagram. Look, the lower prices, P1 to PW, the gain of consumer surplus was D, E, F, and G, as we covered in the previous video. All of that helps. The higher quantity to Q3 is seen as well. So there's plenty on the diagram that we can use to back up this benefit. And this, of course, is great for consumers, right? Lower prices, higher quantity, improves their living standards, improves affordability and quality of life, improves choice, but also is great for producers who can access a greater range of raw materials, maybe at a lower price that can drive up their profit margins. Speaking of profits for firms, that's also a generic benefit of trade. Firms can make more profits, absolutely, especially where they have a comparative advantage. So that, yes, is from comparative advantage exploitation. It's also from greater economies of scale that firms can exploit as they grow in size. They can then exploit economies of scale, lower average costs, and see higher profit margins. It's also there from technology advancement. It's from being able to sell into a greater market. Lots of reasons why firms can benefit from higher profits. And why is that a good thing? Well, as firms see higher profits, they can reinvest in advanced technology. They can maybe pay shareholders high dividends. They can pay off debts, all these benefits of profit right there. But also countries can benefit macroeconomically from higher growth as, yes, they exploit their comparative advantages and export their surplus to the rest of the world. That can increase X minus M in the AD equation, boost AD and boost economic growth. So on this diagram, it's the rest of the world that are going to see these benefits. So the rest of the world suppliers, have the comparative advantage. They're selling Q2 to Q3 units. This is exports for them. BC is their export revenue. We can link that to higher X in the AD equation, X minus M, higher AD, higher growth. And the major benefit of growth for countries is the higher income and the job creation that comes from that growth as a result of free trade. Job creation, higher income that can drive many people out of poverty, that can boost living standards, that can do a lot of good for the country. So that's a huge benefit of trade right there, macroeconomically. Then we mentioned it before that with free trade, technology should spread faster around the world. Technically speaking, we call that greater technology diffusion. That happens as firms can access imports more easily and copy technology very easily, but also firms, as they're making more profits, can reinvest that profit into advancing technology. Better technology is great for consumers who benefit from brand new innovative goods and services, that benefit from lower prices over time, higher quantity and quality over time, and choice over time, but also for producers who can patent their new ideas, their new technologies, maybe get ahead of rivals as a result of that technology advancement. So we see the benefits. This one we can't really link to the diagram, but all the others we pretty much did. The diagram is very powerful to back this up. But it's not all a rosy picture. There are issues with free trade as well. A major problem with comparative advantage exploitation is that it can result in over-specialization for a country to be too reliant on the output of one narrow industry or one narrow sector. The danger with that is you don't get balanced growth. What if there is a demand or supply side shock to that industry affecting revenue or output? Well, where's your growth going to come from if you don't have diversification of industry in your country? Over-specialization can also result in inequality. Those who work in that industry, where there is a comparative advantage, might earn a high income, but those that don't, maybe don't earn anywhere near the same kind of income. And you're very reliant on imports, and imports can be fickle. What if there is international relations issues, or there is a conflict, or there is a supply constraint like a global pandemic, or there are transport related issues? You're not necessarily going to get those key imports that you need. At the same time, we assume that with free trade, there is actually free trade, right? Trade without obstacles and barriers. But what if countries out there are using unfair trade practices, like governments subsidizing their producers heavily, creating an excess supply, which maybe is dumped abroad? Dumping is when a good is sold abroad at a price lower than cost of production, which decimates foreign industry. Now, that's an illegal trade practice. It shouldn't be happening, but might still be happening under the guise of free trade. Well, then it doesn't work for other countries. The notion of free trade, they're going to see more costs than benefits if they're suffering from those kind of trade practices. The risk of unemployment is drastic. We see that on the diagram, right? That industries without a comparative advantage simply die away when that country opens up to free trade. We see the contraction here of domestic supply reducing all the way to Q2. That's deindustrialization. This is shutdown of domestic industry, dying away of domestic industry. And with that is a big rise in structural unemployment, the type of unemployment that does the most harm to a country, that can hold back economic growth, hold back living standards and prosperity, drag down government finances, creating other long-term issues in the economy as well. That's not what you want. That's nasty if this isn't managed properly. What about standards? Again, the issue with free trade, the assumption is that there won't be any regulations or standards protecting product safety, health and safety, worker rights, environmental standards. That's a concern. More generally, the environmental trade-offs, right? The idea is that with free trade, specialize where you have a comparative advantage as a country and maximize the output of that good or service. But as that output increases massively, there could be air pollution that comes with it. There could be water pollution or deforestation, desertification, loss of biodiversity, resource depletion. All these environmental issues could be a significant trade-off, a nasty side effect of increasing output because of trade. And also, what if countries don't have significant comparative advantages compared to other countries in the world? It might mean that the value of imports, import expenditure, exceeds the value of export revenue, resulting in trade deficits and a current account deficit. Later in this playlist, you'll see that a current account deficit can be quite concerning for a country. So there is a risk of that as a country opens up towards a free trade. So there you have it, guys. It's not all a completely perfect picture. There are issues, but there are significant benefits of free trade too. But understanding these cons, we can also see why countries use protectionist measures. That's going to be a feature of forthcoming videos. I can't wait to see you in those. Hopefully you found that interesting. See you soon, guys. Thanks for watching.